Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR, and we're here to talk about all the things going on in the Big Ten. We'll just call this the Purdue episode because I'm sandwiched in between two Boilers, and what an episode to have dueling Boilers on. I know both these guys are excited to talk about the huge Purdue win over Arizona. We had some Arizona fans commenting, so Arizona fans, if you're back here, welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit about how good Purdue is, but I'll make sure to give at least a few flowers to Arizona because they are a good team, and we have to also bolster up Purdue's resume because Northwestern wasn't really helping with that against Chicago State last week. But we won't talk about that. Well, we have another Northwestern game to talk about with them. But before we get started, and let these guys introduce themselves, tell you where you can find them out. Russ, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so of course, if you watch this much, you've seen me a few times on here. I'm with Boiler Express podcast, also with the Big Banter Network. You can find us anywhere you find podcasts, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Just search Boiler Express and you'll find us talking all things Purdue, mainly football and basketball, but we get into other stuff too. And we have a good time over there. We get off the rails a little bit sometimes, but yeah, come check us out.
For sure, for sure. And Dakota, why don't you tell people about you, where they can find you at?
Absolutely. You can find me on most social media platforms at Boiler in Texas, on YouTube as well, same name. I do host the Runaway Train Sports podcast occasionally. The end of the year is kind of kicking me in the schedule a little bit with that. We're hoping to get back into that as basketball season is getting rolling here. So primarily on social media right now.
It's never easy around this time of year to put out podcasting content, but we're doing our best here, and I know everybody else is doing their best as well. So thank you, everybody, for watching. We got 10 viewers in here. Sunday night episode is always doing its best, and I've noticed we do go better after a big Purdue win. So I'm sure we have a few Boilermakers in here with us. Before we get started, I just want to remind you, if you're watching, please do like and subscribe. We appreciate that. That helps put the podcast out there more. And if you're listening on podcast after the fact, please do give us a rating and subscribe there as well. We're also brought to you by Big Banter Sports, bigbantersports.com for all your Big Ten media needs. All right, guys, let's get into it. Our first game, obviously, we had to start with it. Purdue, Arizona. I want to talk about Zach Edey first and foremost, but I feel like I do that every time. And I feel like Purdue has a big three. And when all three of the big three are going and they're clicking, I don't know if there's a single team in the nation that can stop Braden Smith, Fletcher, Loyer, Zach Edey when they're clicking like this. Russ, I'll give you the floor first. What were your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, we talked about it before we came on. It's kind of like, okay, what now? What do you got for Purdue now? What excuse do you have for why we're winning or how you're going to beat us or what you're going to do? Like you said, Arizona fans were pretty chatty last week talking about, oh, he hasn't faced a guy like Ballo. And, man, look at all these weapons we have. And, we talked about on Boiler Express last week how Edey's faced the same stuff when he played Kofi for the first time, right? Everybody's like, Kofi was the big guy in Illinois. He was a big dude, the first guy that really could go toe-to-toe or they thought could go toe-to-toe with Edey. And everybody was talking about how is Edey going to handle it, how they're going to handle this, how's Purdue going to figure this out. And Edey, after the game, he was like, look, everybody wanted to talk about how Purdue was going to handle Kofi, how I was going to handle Kofi, but nobody wanted to talk about how were they going to handle us, right? Purdue had 4 guys averaging double figures, right? Lance Jones averages double figures along with those big 3, right? And, Painter talks about it over and over again that Edey has not faced anything that he hasn't seen before now at this point in his career, right? You want to double him up from up top. You want to double him from his left shoulder, from his right shoulder. You want to let him eat. You want to play physical with him, like whatever you want to do. Like he's seen it before. So, and Fletcher and Braden are now second-year guards, right? They're much more consistent. They've also seen even more in the Big Ten. They've seen more nationally. And, the fouls was the big thing, right? Like one of the crazy statements I heard last week from a guy on this show, you have to watch it to hear what was said last week, was look at the way that the fouls aren't balanced. Look at how many fouls are called on Purdue and how many fouls are, well, what are we supposed to balance? Are we supposed to balance if one coach gets a tech, is the other coach supposed to get a tech? Like if it's a foul, right? Like look at out of bounds calls. We'll talk about a big one in the IU game. Like if an out of bounds call goes for one team, the next play, you call it the other way. Like, no, you call it the way that the game's actually being played, right? Like Alabama wanted to complain about fouls too, but they shot over 70% of their shots from behind the 3-point line. How are you going to get Edey in foul trouble if you're not challenging him? And even in this game, there was fouls called on Edey where he was like straight up in the air, didn't even move, and they still called a foul on him. Like that's how Edey plays defense. Like if you watch Purdue play, he's not really a lockdown defender down low, right? He still gets guys that have beautiful turnaround layups and go right over the top of him, and they're like, oh, he went over the top of him. I can't believe it. Well, Edey's not trying to get fouls. Like, he's not trying to foul people. He's not trying to get all the blocks. So, but yeah, I mean, even in this game, we barely had a free throw discrepancy. Barely. Like, I think we had like 19 to their 16, and we by 8 points, right? Because Braden and Fletch went off. Like, we cracked the curse with the Wilson basketball all of a sudden. Like, so I don't know what, like, this team is a Final Four caliber team. Like, I'm not afraid to say it. I'm not going to jinx it. Yes, you still have to get it done in March. Arizona is also a Final Four caliber team. Like, it's one thing to be of that caliber and actually make the run. I get that, but enjoy this, Purdue fans. Like, enjoy what you're seeing. Even Big Ten fans. This is the first team in the Big Ten history to be number 1 3 years in a row. Like, enjoy it. It's okay to enjoy the regular season. It's okay to enjoy beating the number 1 team. Like, have fun. That's all I gotta say. I guess I'll let somebody else talk now.
Have fun, and I told these guys I would say it. Have fun, and when your team plays them, just die, but do it enjoyably, I guess, because that's what Purdue's going to do to pretty much every single team they face. Now, Northwestern got them because Boo Buie did what Boo Buie does and just went off. Massive credit to Boo Buie for doing that. But at the end of the day, Purdue's not going to lose more than 2 or 3 games in the Big Ten, maybe 4 this season, because that's just who they are. And when your team plays them, you're probably going to lose, and it's okay. It's okay to say that. As an Ohio State fan, I don't ever want to see my team lose, but I know when we play them, if we play them close, that's what I can take away from that. But Dakota, I'll let you get back to the game. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think Russ got to hit the whole thing on the head. I mean, this is the perfect example of why we need to be enjoying this. I mean, Purdue's won 33 regular season non-conference games in a row, including basically any high major team you want to list them. I mean, Purdue's probably beaten them. I remember social media can be a little frustrating sometimes. I remember putting out a tweet before the game saying that this is kind of the perfect scenario for this Purdue team right now. You're facing an Arizona team that was number 1 in the country, playing very, very well, destroying teams, but maybe hadn't been tested quite to the level that Purdue had. And I said that going into this game, it was effectively a win-win, because if you lose to Arizona, it's never going to be a bad loss. And if you win, it's essentially gravy. And I had a lot of people come to me saying, like, oh, loser talk, yada, yada, yada. But I think I just look at it as you just have to enjoy these moments. I mean, Purdue is playing probably the best basketball that I've ever seen played in the college game, just based on the balance that they have. I mean, you saw it exactly in this game. And obviously, Fletcher Loyer, got to talk about him. Braden Smith, can't leave him out either. Zach Edey probably has, if you can call it, a very low-key, ho-hum 22-9 type of game. But I think what you saw the most in this game is exactly what Purdue needs to do going forward. I don't think they were force-feeding Zach, because that's not what Arizona was giving them. But at the same time, as the game progresses, you see the way Purdue run offense kind of shift and change. Fletcher starts hitting, and then all of a sudden you have 2 guys following him off a screen, which leaves a Braden Smith wide open, or provides a passing lane into Zach Edey, who Arizona thankfully was playing him sort of a semi one-on-one down in the low post, and so he was able to feast and get his. I'm so happy that we got a good Fletcher Loyer game. I mean, it just seems like every once in a while in these big games, he'll come out and give you 27, 4 steals, and just showed up everywhere. And it's just massive. And then obviously Braden Smith, I feel like you're jumping around all over the place, but that's just kind of what this game was for everyone. Braden, obviously killer. Murderers in this pick and roll game that he's running with Zach Edey, because Arizona, I mentioned it before the game started, that Arizona plays one of the deepest, hardest drops in that pick and roll coverage. And so I said he might go for 30 just based on that, because he's going to get to that 15-foot pull-up that he hits. It feels like 100% of the time. It feels like it's almost automatic. And it's just, I mean, what do you do? I mean, you have Fletcher Loyer hitting 3 after 3. Arizona tries to throw Purdue off by doubling Zach off the strong side. Immediate kick back out for another 3. You have Trey Kaufman-Renn, who I want to give a huge shout out. May not have showed up big in the box score, but it's that first 8-minute stint, which I have to tangent briefly, which is probably one of the most beautiful 8-minute stints of basketball I think I've ever seen. Came up huge in that first stint. You saw Mason Gillis do Mason Gillis things. Even Caleb First came in and made Keyshawn Johnson's life a little harder down the stretch when he was going off in the first half. I mean, you just look at this Purdue team and you look around and say, yeah, they had 3 guys do all the scoring, but at the same time, that's all you needed in this one. And all the other guys did exactly what they needed to do to get this win. It was one of the most fun basketball games I think I've ever seen, and the fact that Purdue was in it and came out on top is just icing on the cake for me.
Well, and one of the reasons why guys like Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer were able to play so well is because you got point guard Zach Edey in this game, led the team in assists. I mean, Zach Edey, he is smarter this year than he was last year. And that's not to say he wasn't smart last year, because he was really smart last year too. But this year, he sees the double coming. He sees where his guys are spotted up, ready to shoot. And his guys aren't just shooting this year too. When he passes, they're making a play. They're dribble driving. They're kicking to somebody else. They're getting other people involved. I think Lance Jones could have had a much bigger game. He was, 1 for 6 from 3, so he could have had a bigger game there. But, I mean, how much can you really complain? Because you had Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer both almost get 30. So at the end of the day, like, this wasn't the story of Braden Smith went off. This wasn't the story of Zach Edey, which is too much to handle. This was the story of Purdue put together a complete game. Maybe would have liked to see a little bit more on defense, but they were still very, very good on defense. I mean, this is an outstanding Arizona offense that they were trying to stop. So we got to give credit there as well. But at least offensively, I don't know if you're going to see a better offensive performance in the regular season in college basketball this year. Russ, am I right there? Am I wrong? What are your thoughts?
Well, that brought up one other point that I heard going around a little bit. I think I won't mention the name, but I already started to. There's another pod that loves to.
Nobody knows what pod you're talking about when you talk about Fields.
There's some people that throw out some Purdue hate still, even after a game like that, and they want to say, "Well, Purdue had to play a perfect game to be able to beat Arizona." We went like 6+ minutes without a field goal in the second half.
8+ minutes.
8+, yeah.
After they took off the basket interference.
Yeah, it was an 11 to -2 run, basically, right? Like, because we like literally lost 2 points during that run that they gave us. But like, we literally went almost half the second half without hitting a field goal, and we still won this game by 8 points. Like, comfortably won this game. So, yes, Purdue put together a masterful 30 out of 40 minutes, but we still won even without putting a full 40 minutes together, in my opinion.
I agree. What were your thoughts, Dakota?
Yeah, I mean, just building off that exact point, I mean, how are you going to have a game where you score 92 points, but you go 8 minutes without a field goal? And I think that just plays into exactly one of my favorite quotes from Fletcher Loyer after that game, which you look at that game and that box score and you say, man, Purdue played very, very well. But even I agree entirely with Fletcher Loyer when he said that Purdue still hasn't played their best basketball yet this year. Exactly because those 3 guys go off, but then you look down the list, you see Lance Jones go 1 for 6. You see Trey Kaufman-Renn have a very solid, quiet night. You see Mason Gillis kind of really struggle to get going. Miles Colvin and Camden Heide really didn't make much of an impact like many of us hoped they would. And so I still think that there's a long way for this Purdue team to go. And I think that's a very scary thought for both the Big Ten and the rest of the country.
Yeah, and another guy I have to give credit for because I don't know, and I think you said it earlier, Dakota. Trey Kaufman-Renn, I mean, the dude, he doesn't show up on the stat sheet every single game, but the impact he has in this game, energy-wise, I think just like other guys building off what he does the little things here and there that you need him to do. And Purdue needs a guy like that. Lance Jones, he kind of does that as well. I mean, he still got 9 last night, even when he went, 1 for 6, we said, from 3. So he does that really, really well. But Kaufman-Renn, I really like this kid. He's probably never going to be a star in college basketball if I had to bet, but he's a really, really good role player who it doesn't show up on the box score, but he does what needs to be done. So any more thoughts on this game before we move on, guys?
I mean, what more can you really say?
So you want to sing their praises one more time?
I mean, let me wax poetic about Purdue here. No, I mean, honestly, this was one of the most fun basketball games I think I might have ever seen. I think the ref show did kind of get a little iffy there towards the end, but I thought that actually officiating in this game was very well. I think both teams I said this multiple times during the game too, that we were definitely watching two of the 3 best teams in college basketball play go at it against each other. And I have nothing but good things to say about Arizona. Most of their fans are okay. At least they took it better than some. But I mean, Caleb Love going off for 24. Keshawn Johnson was amazing, 24 points. I mean, even Ballo ended up with his 13. I mean, this is what college basketball is all about, and I would take this 100 times out of 100 and over like the Purdue Tennessee game. It's just the night and day difference, and that's what college basketball is all about.
Yeah, and shout out to the team down. Shout out to the team down south, because had they not ruined the Crossroad Classics, this game would have never happened. So thank you all. Thank you.
Gotta give them their props when they deserve it. They said we're too good for this. We got to go to Kansas and lose. We got to play Arizona and lose. We got to play Kansas at home and lose. And you know what? Purdue will take that Arizona spot in Indy and we'll take that dub.
Speaking of that team, IU played Kansas, and man, it was quite the start for IU. Assembly Hall was bouncing. I could tell just by watching it on TV. Those fans were excited. Those players were excited. I think I saw Mackenzie Mbako just like scream in one of the Kansas players' face at one point. I was like, yes, I love to see that. And especially from him, a guy that has been a little up and down this season, but really able to kind of feed off that energy and do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I felt like IU fatigue set in. Their starters were the only ones that were giving them anything, and even one of their starters couldn't give them points. He gave them everything else that he could, but he couldn't give them points. And at the end of the day, I think Kansas they were too deep, and they had the legs, they had the energy to make it through this game. Talking about that other podcast that you were talking about, Russ, I heard them talk about how like Kansas just went in and they're like, yeah, we're the better team and we're going to beat them. I don't think so. I don't think Kansas is that much better of a team than IU. Kansas has role players in Hunter Dickinson. They do not have a star. They do not have McCullough is a good player. This Furphy guy, he's a good player. They have good players. They do not have a star player on their team, and I think Indiana exposed them in a lot of ways when all they have is really Hunter Dickinson to make things happen for him. Dakota, I'm curious on your thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head that I've been a pretty vocal proponents basically since Maui that I don't think this Kansas team is as good as everyone seemed to think they were coming into the year. Now, granted, they definitely deserved a lot of credit going into the year, but I think the performances we've seen from them so far this season definitely hasn't lived up to the hype. Granted, they're 10-1. They've won 10 games. They've only lost the one in Maui. But at the same time, it's like they're 4 deep realistically, and even their shooting isn't the best. I mean, they end up 6 of 18 in this one, but I'm definitely more of a pessimist when it comes to Kansas. But going into this game, I think they were also the perfect matchup to win this game versus Indiana. And I made this note when I was watching it back earlier today. How much do we think this game impacts just the difference in where Kansas is as a program right now and where Indiana is as a program right now? Obviously, both Blue Bloods have long histories of success, but I just felt like about 10 minutes left in the second half of this game, you could feel that momentum shift. Indiana was up 10. There was going really well. And then all of a sudden, Kansas gets a stop, gets a bucket, gets a foul, and one goes to the line. And then all of a sudden, it's like you could feel the momentum just leaving. And I feel like Indiana just didn't have an answer for them. And so it was just, Indiana played a fantastic game. You get Trey Galloway's best game of his career, 28 points on 12 of 17 shooting. I don't think you could ask for literally anything more than that. Mackenzie Mbako, best game of his career so far in Indiana, 14 points. And granted, he was dealing with some foul trouble there down the stretch. I think my biggest question mark is obviously not that it's his fault, Gabe Cupps. Obviously, forcing him into starting lineup, true freshman. He's being asked to do some things that maybe he wasn't expecting or really should be expected to do at this point. But I think he, pass first point guard, he's going to give you what he's going to give you. I think my biggest question mark coming out of this game for Indiana is Loyer. Obviously, he's feasted on against some low major competition. Yeah, he had 11 and 15, but on 3 of 12 shooting, and I didn't see anything from him in this game. In the biggest game of probably the season so far, Kansas at home, you're rocking, Assembly Hall is fired up. He wasn't there for me. And they probably played their best game of the season so far, and it still just wasn't enough to win this type of game when I think as a program, Indiana's probably expecting to win this game more times than not.
Well, yeah, especially when you have a start like that and you have a lead that they had. I forget what their lead got up to, but they 13. They had a sizable lead in this game, and it just hurts to lose that lead. I agree with you on Loyer to a certain extent. I was very up and down with him on this game. I felt like there were times where he did something, and I was like, yes, that's what you want out of him. And then there were also times where it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you have to get down there. You have to bang. You have to, make the plays happen in the paint. And Hunter Dickinson, he just kind of ate his lunch a few times. And I think all of us can say here, none of us here are Hunter Dickinson fans. So, so that was hard to watch. But at the end of the day, I think he battled well, and his very first like true big man that's going to play him hard of the season. I just hope he can build off of it this season and be challenged a little bit more with that as he gets into Big Ten play, because he's certainly going to see a lot more of that in Big Ten play. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so I'm not going to, try to be too negative on you because Burke's been a pretty good guy to us. He said some pretty nice things, and so I'll take it easy. But if I'm an IU fan, I really got to be questioning kind of the game plan and the play calling a little bit because not just Kilo Ware, but Malik Renew was 5 of 13. So they Ware and Renew combined for 8 of 25 shooting, and it seemed like they had some kind of contract like you talk about some of these pro teams that if the running back's getting paid $12 million a year and the backup's getting paid $500,000 a year, well, guess what? The starter's going to get 25 carries and the backup's going to get 3 carries, even if they go for 20 yards every carry. So it's like, it was like, especially in the second half, they just kept wanting to feed Renew, and he kept missing and missing and missing. And Kansas just made that run, took the lead, and went and won the game. And it's like, if you have a guy like Trey Galloway that's the hot hand, and M'Baku who's having the best game of his season so far, why would you not ride those hands? Why would you not just give them the ball, right? Like that's what you saw that with the last game we talked about with Purdue. Like, Braden and Fletcher, they just kept giving them the ball because they were hot, right? Like if they aren't hot, you don't see them take as many shots as what they did. But for some reason, like they kept wanting to try to go at Hunter Dickinson because, yeah, he's not the greatest defender. He's elite offensively, I think, but his defense is definitely suspect. So it's like they had this game plan going in to say, hey, we need to attack down low because that's where our strengths are. Well, you've got to adapt in game. When you see a guy going off like Galloway or a guy having a game like M'Baku, you've got to shift that in game. To sit there and see them. I don't know if you saw the quote against Louisville where they beat Louisville basically as they switched to a zone. And the reason they switched to a zone is because some dude in the huddle is like, hey, Mike, let's run a zone. And he's like, okay, we'll give it a shot. So they switched to a zone and they win the game. And after the game, they're like, hey, how did that, did you all practice that? That's a great switch? And he's like, no, we don't practice that at all. Like it just, we gave it a shot and it worked. It's like, so if I'm an IU fan, I'm going, hey, look, our team has obviously got the talent. Like we can compete with the big guys, right? Like, and I saw some crazy takes from IU fans. Look, just because you lost to Kansas like that doesn't mean you deserve to be a top 10 team. I don't understand that transitive property.
I love that.
They're going to that length.
That tweet sent me through so many hoops. Oh.
But I mean, yeah, they definitely have the talent to compete and to make a run and be a tournament team. But I'd be a little frustrated as an IU fan with why are we not riding the hot hand? Why are we not adapting to the game flow?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there is some things to be said there. I think Malik Renew in this game changed when he started getting more and more in foul trouble. It seemed like he just was not playing as aggressive as he was at the beginning of the game. And I felt like that happened a bit with M'Baku as well. He had, 4 fouls? Mm-hmm. And Trey Galloway eventually fouled out, but I think that was late in the game.
Yeah, it was like right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end there. So, but I mean, You tell me, because I never want to be the guy who blames the refs, Dakota. But you tell me, should IU fans at least be a little bit upset with the reffing of this game? Because it definitely did not seem like it was doing IU any favors to me.
Listen, Purdue fans more than any love to chat about reffing and how in college basketball games. And I will say that I think a lot of people, there was some conversation before the game even started. There's a Purdue fan who actually does officiating and knows a lot of it. He was even commenting saying that this doesn't feel like the right crew that's going to be able to manage this game correctly. And I think we saw it a lot down the stretch. There were definitely some iffy calls, specifically there towards the end, especially after a review that out of bounds call that ended up giving it to Kansas before expertly trolling the Indiana crowd by giving the ball to Indiana and then reversing it back to Kansas. But I mean, unfortunately, this is just going to happen sometimes. You're just going to get a crew that's not necessarily up to the challenge of this level of game. And while I'm also a proponent of you can't blame everything on the refs. Indiana definitely didn't make the right adjustments and plays down the stretch to win the game, but you can't say the officiating helped at all either. So,
and I know you guys hate the numbers argument, but just entertain me for a second, okay? McCullough Jr., okay, scored 21 points. Right? And we just went off about how Khalil Ware was 3 of 12. The dude was 3 of 11. He shot 16 free throws. Was he fouled? He was not fouled that much. I'm sorry. He was not fouled that much. He was not, just absolutely Zach Edey down there where he's got cuts and bruises. I know you guys will like that one, so I shouted that one out for you. He's not got cuts and bruises like Zach Edey down there or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. Some of the fouls are warranted because, they were fouling him down there. But at the end of the day, the guy gets 3 for 11, 21 points. Russ, was it fair in your eyes? What do you think about the reffing?
Yeah, so kind of like Dakota, I definitely don't want to say, hey, the refs are the reason this happened or the reason that we lost the game or won the game. But I also am I'm an anti-fan of don't let the refs decide the game then, like put the game out of the refs' hands. Well, that's not possible. And is it really fair to say if these two teams are even that one call should decide the game? Because the team that wins the game because of that call, you could also say, hey, you shouldn't put the game in the hand of the refs, and they had to get that call. Like, you have pivotal calls at the end of the game that if it's a one possession game and it's a possession call, like that is huge. That is huge because you got the team that might be up with less than 30 seconds left and have the lead. If you give them the ball, now it's an automatic foul situation. They can make it a 2-possession game. Whereas if the team behind has it and they're down 1, down 2, and they get the possession, they can go win the game. Like that's a game changing call. So yeah, it's frustrating and there's nothing you can do about it. Like if the call is made that way, but I definitely understand the frustration to say, hey, look, they didn't make the right call and that could have cost us the game. Like you're right. But at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do about it. So, but I would say too, with McCullough's free throws, that was the guy it seemed like they were sending to the line like the last 3 or 4 or 5 times at the end of the game. So I feel like half those free throws were like the trying to extend the game free throws. So I will say that much, but
Right. I mean, they definitely weren't all, driving the lane and stuff like that. But still, like, I just didn't feel like he was getting fouled that much going down low. Yeah, I had a problem with it. So you got a fan in here, Dylan. Russ, so handsome. Thanks, Dylan. All right, guys. Any more thoughts on that one? I think we covered that one pretty well.
No, that's a tough one for Indiana, honestly.
All right. Yeah, well, we'll get to they have coming back. They have risen. Michigan State. Tom Izzo comes back. I doubted him. I said, you guys aren't going to the tournament. And Tom Izzo just, basically called me an idiot. Look at what I can do. Tyson Walker went off. I still don't know if the front court was doing as much as maybe they should have, but at least Tyson Walker, I mean, it just felt like he was dragging this team, and he was like, I am not going to let anybody else lose this game for me. We're going to win this game, guys. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on the Michigan State win?
Yeah, congratulations, JR. You're officially bulletin board material for Tom Izzo, like one of the greats in the game.
Yep.
So that's huge. That's huge. But I mean, yeah, this is the game that, in Michigan State, you think they're on the ropes, you think they're done, you think they're going to have a bad season. They'll win this game and then all of a sudden go win 12 games in the Big Ten, end up as like a 5 or 6 seed, make a Sweet 16 run, and you're like, oh, that was the down year for Michigan State. Like, man. But yeah, I mean, their backcourt or their front court, backcourt. I get those confused sometimes. Their backcourt definitely kind of got it going and kind of it was like a get right game for them. And it was huge to thump a top 10 team like that, an undefeated top 10 team like that. Like that's definitely a statement to say, hey, look, don't close the door on our season yet. Like it still matters what happens in March and what matters in conference play. So it was, if I'm a Michigan State fan, like Ohio State fan, I feel better going into conference season than I might have felt 2 weeks ago.
I appreciate the shout out there. Dakota, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think this was a game that I think I kind of expected Michigan State to win this one, especially after that loss at Nebraska, just because, I mean, this is their last opportunity to get that marquee non-conference win, and they played like a team desperate for a statement win. And I wasn't quite expecting this much of a statement win, but I mean, I turned this game on expecting to kind of be really in tune with it and really just like excited to see what Michigan State was going to do. But I was flipping channels by halfway through the first half just because Michigan State came out and was dominant from the run. I mean, Tyson Walker played like I think a lot of us expected Tyson Walker to play. I mean, 4-4 from 3 for 25 points. I mean, that's Tyson Walker should be playing every single game. But you saw it. I think the biggest change that we saw in Michigan State in this one was the defensive intensity. Mm-hmm. I think that they played a lot more cohesively on that side, and they definitely used their athleticism to their advantage in this one, especially once they kind of really started to put it on that danger zone level for Baylor. I think Baylor kind of tightened up, and Michigan State really just jumped on them at that point, and there was no looking back. I mean, 45-17 at the half. What can you say about that? I mean, at that point, it was over. I mean,
That's got to be some obscure record, like to be
somewhere
below
right?
500, paying a top 10 undefeated team to beat them 45-17 in the first half. Like that's got to be some record.
We'll get Frank on that.
I remember, it's like it got to halftime and I was like, cool, I'm going to flip to a new game because I mean, this is just going to be coast time the rest of the way. But I mean, you got contributions from pretty much everyone. Like, yeah, obviously Tyson Walker led the way with 25. AJ Hogard puts in 14 and probably one of his better outings of the season so far. He was kind of a little bit everywhere. And then from there, it was just kind of like bits and pieces from everyone else. I mean, this is a game that, Tyson Walker played the most minutes at 31. I mean, they had 11 players score in this one. I don't even know what kind of notes you can really have statistically in this, just because I mean it was over from the beginning. And I think the most interesting thing that we're going to have to see is how Michigan State responds, because I think they're going to get a little bit of confidence going here, coming off of this game against Oakland next, then Stony Brook, and then Indiana State, and then it's back into Big Ten play. So there's a non-zero chance that they could rattle off a few wins in a row here, start feeling pretty good. But it'll be, I think, a little bit of time before they kind of get hit in the mouth again, and they might be able to get this thing rolling. Who knows? But like you mentioned, JR, that the presence down low, I don't think is still quite where it needs to be, especially as they get back into Big Ten play. I mean, they're really not getting much down there. I mean, Xavier Booker got 8 minutes tonight, so I guess that's pretty good to see from him. He had 7, but I mean, Mike Sissoko, I felt like had a pretty decent game, but then I looked up and he was 1 of 2 from the field, 4 points. Billy Call only had 5. Carson Cooper only had 8. I mean, I still need to see more from Michigan State's front court. I also get it confused sometimes just to get back into Big Ten play, because I think in this game it was like they were running all over the floor. You didn't need that much from them. This is a game you could let Tyson Walker go for 25 and walk out with an almost 24-point win. But I need to see more from that front court before I declare them back.
Well, and they were serviceable in this game.
Exactly.
I think that was the biggest thing. Michigan State, I always say that, good defense feeds your offense. When you play good defense, you're sound on defense, and you get on offense, you have the confidence to go, get a bucket, make a play. Tyson Walker's offense fed everything else on this Michigan State team this game. I mean, the dude was just going down, crossover behind the back, fading away, shoot the three-pointer, make, and it just seemed like the entire team was like, okay, we're not losing this game. We're not going to let it happen, because Tyson Walker is literally playing out of his mind right now. And it is one of those rare cases where an offense can feed a defense in these games. And I don't know if that's sustainable. I don't know if that can keep on happening. I question whether I should ever doubt Tom Izzo again. I know it's not a smart thing to do, but I'm right there with you, Dakota. I look at this front court and I'm like, you were serviceable. You that was fine. But are you going to be able to get away with a serviceable a front court in the Big Ten? I mean, we just saw Nebraska have 2 players, and we'll talk about them later. We just saw Nebraska have 2 players combine and get 30 rebounds. Michigan State had 27 in this game. 2 guys on Nebraska had more rebounds in their game than all of Michigan State had in their game. So, listen, I want Tom Izzo to do well. I think Tom Izzo is a storied coach, and I want him to do well, and I want him to be able to make these things happen. But at the end of the day, it's like, yes, Tyson Walker went off, but is this sustainable? Can Tyson Walker put up 25 and just go out of his mind shooting in these games? And can AJ Hogard continue to be the passer that he needs to be and run this offense so that way he gets other guys involved? I think he can. We saw it last year. I think it can happen. I think Xavier Booker finally made it onto the floor. That was nice to see. What, he put in like 8 minutes and had 7 points or something like that?
Yep.
Just to check. Yeah, he played 8 minutes and had 7 points. Put the dude out there. Let him play. I know he didn't get a single rebound, but at the end of the day, like, he still had more points than Sissoko, still had more points than Hall. So, I don't know. Russ, do you have any thoughts on Xavier Booker? Should he be playing more? Am I off there? The front court, any thoughts on that?
I mean, one approach I always have with Purdue basketball, and there's been a lot of controversy over who should start, who shouldn't get minutes, and how good is Ethan Morton, how good was Brandon Newman, et cetera, et cetera. Matt Painter and Tom Izzo get paid millions of dollars to do what they do. I guarantee you they know better than we do. So there's something going on there. He's going to, do you think Izzo wants to win more than anybody else on that team? Yeah. So he's going to do what gives them the best chance to win and the best chance to have success in the long term. So trust the process. Does it make sense? No, I agree. It doesn't make sense. And I understand that especially when your record is 4-5 going into this game, like I understand, like, hey, switch it up, but it's Tom Izzo. You got, until he, has that season where they win single digit games, miss the tournament, then it's like, okay, the game's passed him up. Until he has that moment at the end of the season, don't doubt him. So, and then pour one out for his kid, right? Steven Izzo finally had a chance to get his first game.
That was awesome.
First points in the college game, and 0 for 2 from the free throw line, man.
That's tough. That is tough.
Rough.
Got a rebound, though.
Hey, stats.
So, he was in the box score. So.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we'll move on from there. We will, before we move on, and let you know about CBB Analytics. CBB Analytics gives you all of the information you need. I can't. When I was looking at CBB Analytics for the game recap on this one, it was really funny because one of the cool things they do is they give you like a score streaks graph, and it shows you kind of like a bar graph of this team scored this many points. I can't even read what the score streak was of the very first like long score streak for Michigan State because it was literally just like off the chart. And then it was 6, 8, 9 after that. So, that all contributed to this, what would we say, 45-17 first half. Because it literally, I kid you not, it's completely off the chart. And the score differential is funny because at that same moment, like they literally had to enlarge the box. So basically they broke CBB Analytics, which is really, really hard to do because it's a great site, gives you a lot of great information. Frank uses it over at Boiler Express. Do you have it too, Russ, or is it just Frank?
Yeah, I've taken some looks at it. I don't necessarily have the free time on my hands that he does, but it's a lot of cool stuff over there. If you've ever wanted to know, any kind of stat, any extensive stat, and you want to know not just that, but how they stack up with the rest of the country,
yes.
To sit there and look at Edey and see how his offensive rebound percentage is the 100th percentile in the country. It's like, yeah, that dude truly is elite. You want to see stuff like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny when you go to Edey's page, it's like 198, 100, 100. It's just insane. It's like, oh, yeah, he's National Player of the Year. So, yeah, anyway, go check out CBB Analytics. It's paid. It's free, whatever you want to do over there. A lot of great stuff. Check them out. All right, guys. Chris Holtman breaks a clipboard, bloody hand and all, just going at it. Mick Cronin does Mick Cronin things, slows the game down, just, very defensive ball to really frustrate the guards of Ohio State. Ohio State eventually comes away with the win, but it was not an easy one. I know this UCLA team is only 5-4, but I got to give this team credit. I think UCLA is a better team than maybe they are going to get credit for. I could see them upsetting a few teams in the Pac-12. I could see them slipping in to the NCAA tournament. I'm not saying they're a great team. I'm not saying this is a great win, but this is what you wanted to see after the Penn State game. Ohio State come back, make a statement like this and come away with it. Dakota, what were some of your thoughts on Ohio State's win?
Yeah, absolutely. This is honestly a great win for Ohio State and a very storied Big Ten rivalry matchup with UCLA Bruins. That starts next year. But no, honestly, I was watching this game and we'll go with defensive slugfest in this one for sure. As UCLA goes 1 of 9 from 3 and Ohio State follows it up with a timely, to be fair, a very timely 1 of 15. With their lone 3 coming, I think, with like 40-something odd seconds left to really kind of push this one at it. So it came at the perfect time. But I think, honestly, this was a great win for Ohio State. I mean, they showed exactly what they're going to need to do as they also prepare to get back into Big Ten play of can you win ugly? It's the classic Big Ten phrase of can you grind out these types of games where it's really going to be close. No one's going to make really large runs. And it's all going to come down to who can, take care of the ball, who can get the shots when they need it to, and who's going to make the least amount of mistakes down the stretch. I saw a lot of really nice things on this one. In my notes, I actually checked afterwards. It really wasn't quite the box score for Felix Akbara, 10 points, 4 boards, an assist, and 2 blocks. So I thought he put in some really good minutes, really hard fought 23 minutes tonight. I was really impressed to see what he was able to do to frustrate UCLA's bigs. Now, UCLA doesn't have the most elite bigs out there, but I mean, Adam Bona is a monster, just physicality. So I think he was able to frustrate him kind of a lot and really use his athleticism and length to disrupt a lot of stuff down low for UCLA. So really good one from him. And then other than that, I mean, it was just very balanced. Jameson Battle gives you 14. Akbara gives you 10. Thornton gives you 13. Rangel Jr., fantastic game with 19. I mean, this was just all about tough shot making, who can get the stops, and come out on top. I was very impressed.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the game, you really saw Ohio State finally get that confidence, finally be able to pull ahead, which is hard to do against UCLA. Like we talked about, they play a slower pace, they play really, really good defense, and so when you can finally make that happen, and this was like a homecoming game for Bruce Thornton. He's kind of from this area, so he had his family there. He didn't have his best game in the world, 7 rebounds, led the team in that, so that was really good for him, especially as a guard. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think the story of this game is Ohio State did what they had to do to survive. Kind of felt like a tournament game a little bit. Boy, it was sleepy. Going from the what was the game I was watching before? I forget what. It wasn't a Big Ten game, but I went from a different game to this one, and I was like, man, is there anybody alive?
Oh, we got to get some fans in there.
It sounded like COVID.
I remember I turned the game on, and I was like, there's no way. It looked like I could individually pick out where people were sitting. I was like, I know everyone was excited about Kentucky UNC after that, but I mean, we got to get some people in there. It was a COVID sleepy game for sure.
It felt like everybody there was there to see Kentucky and UNC, which those are 2 big brands, so can't complain about that. But yeah, it was definitely a sleeper. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, to second what you said, JR, UCLA is 48th in KenPom. I know, some people trash that and they don't want to put any credence in that, but it's usually pretty consistent and it's usually pretty accurate when you look at the teams that make the Final Four, the teams that make the Sweet 16, and like 13 of the 16 Sweet 16s are top 20 KenPom. So, and Ohio State's 26th in the KenPom. So they're still respectable, as far as even the struggles that they've had. And you're 9-2. Like, what are you worried about as far as like how bad this season you think is going? But, the lead though, but don't bury the lead here. This might have been the best uniform and floor combination of a game all year. Like I wish more teams did this. More teams would wear color uniforms. I saw the football season, USC and UCLA is like the big color game, uniform game. Like, why do teams not do this more often and just make the game look that much better? Like that was awesome to see. But yeah, Roddy Gale has been quite the revelation for y'all this year. Like everybody thought it was going to be the Thornton year and he was going to lead y'all, but and Zed Key coming back, what was he going to bring to the table? But Roddy Gale, 19 points, 6 of 11, 7 of 8 from the free throw line has been quite the revelation. And I don't know, this is another record, right? Like, when's the last time you've seen a combined 8% from the 3-point line and both teams in the 60s? Like, how does that happen? Like, this is the kind of game you'd expect to be 47-40, not 67-60. Like, how did they score that many points? I don't get it.
And no overtime as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like it was 48-48 and then they squeaked over 60. Yeah, no, I agree. I think this was a huge thing for Ohio State to struggle offensively like they did and really be able to clamp down on defense. Now, Bona missed some easy ones down low that I feel like, could have really hurt Ohio State. But at the end of the day, they were able to get it done. Felix Akpara, I really liked his intensity. He had some really, really dumb fouls, and Bill Raftery was pointing them out, and I was agreeing with him. Like, some of them were just really, really dumb fouls. But at the end of the day, they did what they had to do. Zed Key didn't have his best game ever. He played 17 minutes, only had 3 points, added 3 rebounds to that as well. But I think another big story here was Dale Bonner was able to play and give good minutes and make a lot of things happen on the floor for him. Only had 6 points, played 22 minutes, but he was able to make a lot of things happen for Ohio State, give them a lot of chances. Not everything that he made happen turned into points, but I think you're starting to see him kind of come into his own a little bit more. I'm still going to be very critical of Evan Mahaffey. Dude's got to score more than 2 points if he's in the starting lineup. I know. I agree, Russ. The coaches know more than me, but I'm also looking at this and I'm like, dude, I'm glad that you can play defense. But give me more than 2 points. So it was definitely an interesting one there, to say the least. So Dakota, you have any more thoughts on this one before we move on?
I think the only thing left is, yes, this is a very good win for Ohio State, but to play devil's advocate a little bit is we've seen teams in the past win these tight, white knuckle type of games where you can't really shoot. But I think the biggest question is going to be how they come out and respond next time. How do they come out? Can they come out against New Orleans? New Orleans, perfect opportunity to kind of get back rolling on offense a little bit. But that's always what I look for in these types of games where you go 1 for from beyond the arc and kind of really struggle to get that outside shot making. Is, can you get back to that starting next time out? Just make this a blip. And granted, yes, it is against UCLA, a very tough-nosed style of defense, and they're going to make you earn everything. But you don't want to get too down in the weeds with only relying on playing those kind of physical kind of games. So I'm interested to see what they can do next time.
Oh, believe me, Dakota, nobody is waiting for the slump harder than I am. I know January is coming, and it's like, the winter is coming, and everything's just going to be sad. So let's hope Chris Holtman can get him out of that and not have it this year. So, all right, let's move on to the next one. Northwestern comes back from Chicago State and wins this one 56-46. Now, DePaul is not the best team in the world, not a great team, but, they were able to come back and they were able to they didn't even put up 60, but they played good, solid defense, was able to make some things happen. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think they're 215th in KenPom is DePaul. So, you don't want to see a 10-point win against a team like that. You want to see a 30-point win. But a win's a win. Langford is turning out to be a more consistent scorer than Boo Buie. Boo Buie's his big thing is, and Purdue fans want to get all upset that, well, how do we let him go off for 31? That's just what some elite guards do when they're elite offensively. Like they have big blow up games and then they're down. Like you look at his last 6 games, and 3 times he had 23 or more points, and 3 times he was at 11 or less, including 2 single digit games. So, if Boo Buie can get consistent, if he can consistently give you, like, he averages 18 a game, but he's never at 18, right? Like he's either going off or he's doing nothing. And, he needs to be consistent for them to have a chance to be successful in the Big Ten and make the tournament and make a run. He's got the talent. There's no question about that. But, it's just, you talk about 4 from 14 from the field, 1 of 7 from 3, like, against DePaul, like not against Purdue, not against Ohio State, not against a top team. Like, you've got to be able to shoot well against a low team like that. Like if you can't get consistent, I would be worried as a Northwestern fan right now. Like, it's cool to beat Purdue. It's great. Like, but everybody's going to get up for Purdue. It's like he used all his energy, all his XP points to play Purdue and go off. And then now he's got nothing left. So
spent all of his virtual currency on the power-ups for the Purdue game.
Right.
Now he's regressing with the fatigue. So Dakota, what were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a lot of the same stuff. Coming off of a bad Chicago State loss, going on the road to a DePaul team that one of their 2 wins is against Louisville, right? Mm-hmm. Is it winning that one? I didn't watch that game. I really should have. That's a sickos game if you've ever seen one. But nonetheless,
if you bet it, you're really a sicko.
Oh my god, if you bet that game, oh boy. But yeah, man, you want to talk about sleepy game? I mean, this was. Again, Purdue hangover. I mean, it's kind of like what I said with Ohio State. It's like, can you go off that Purdue game or that Chicago State game, and can you get back on track? Yes, they won. They scored 56. Buie 4 of 14, 1 of 7. I think the most worst things that you could see from Boo Buie's stat line is only 2 of 2 from the free throw line. You're telling me Boo Buie, who is all about getting to the rim, getting contact, making tough shots, is only going to the free throw line 2 times? I mean, Northwestern only went to the line 7 times as a team. They hit 6 of 7. But, I mean, you look on the other side, I mean, DePaul kind of kept this in the game because they went 16 of 19 from the free throw line. Right. I watched back this game, and I think just the most of my notes was just, where's the fire? And it's like we said, everyone's going to get up for Purdue, but can you get up for DePaul on a sleepy, Sunday afternoon? And it just, you don't see that. And I don't think they're going to be able to play games like this and kind of take that step a lot of us saw after that Purdue game. They were playing very well, knock off number 1 Purdue at home, and everyone's kind of starting to look and going, they get ranked 25th, and everyone's kind of like, can they take that next step? But then they go and lose to Chicago State. Then you go to DePaul and play a sleepy, almost under 100 over-under total. This is just this team's got to get that fight back. I mean, obviously they won. Good job you didn't drop 2 in a row to pretty bad teams. All respect to DePaul and Chicago State. I mean, Chicago State beat them fair and square. But I mean, a 10-point road win over DePaul, you're going to take every true road game that you can get. But I might be kind of waxing a bit negative towards Northwestern. But I mean, I don't think you can have more of a regression than knocking out Purdue at home and then kind of having the next 2 games. And they got to get whatever mojo they need back. I don't know. Boo Buie needs to dream of Braden Smith opposite of him before every game, but he's got to get back to being that aggressive self and really taking initiative. But they won. I guess that's what I can give them that. I can give them that. Not everyone can say that. I don't know. Apparently I'm pretty down on Northwestern as I kept ranting on there, but yeah, they got to get that figured out. I don't think you're going to be able to take this kind of play into Big Ten play, and as down as the Big Ten is, I don't think they would fare very well the way they're playing right now.
Well, and I think it's natural that because you guys are both obviously Purdue fans, when you see your team lose to somebody, you almost like inherently want to see that team do well, because then it like almost validates the loss. Like, oh, well, that's why, they're just a good team, and we lost to a good team. But when you see your team lose to Northwestern, who goes out and drops one to Chicago State, and then goes out and only beats DePaul by 10, and it doesn't seem like they're able to get anything going, it's like, really, we lost to this team? Like this is who we lost to. I mean, I think it's natural to get into that to get into that phase, but I think you just have to look at it and say Northwestern did exactly what a team needs to do to beat Purdue, which is that they threw every single big man possible at Zach Edey, got him fouled out, and just made life for Zach Edey miserable. And Boo Booey just played out of his mind. They had a guy just really go off and play out of his mind. They're not going to be able to do that every single game. And you're exactly right, Russ. Boo Booey's average is 18 points, but how often does he actually score 18? That's a false average. So, but I do want to point out one guy in this game and a little bit of trivia for you guys. So, or not trivia, I guess stats for you guys, because stats are brought to you by CBB Analytics. Who currently leads? He plays for Northwestern. Who currently leads the Big Ten in assist to turnover ratio? He plays for Northwestern. He's in the starting lineup.
Is it Langborg?
No, it's not Langborg. Langborg he didn't have any turnovers this game, so that would have been a good guess. Yeah. He is up there at 10th, I think. There's 3 guys for Northwestern in the top 10.
Well,
it is Matthew Nicholson, the 7-footer.
I was looking at his stats. I was like, he had no turnovers and 1 assist, but I was like,
he averages 11.5 assists per turnover.
But is that how many assists he's had all year? Like he's had like 11 assists.
Up.
I think he's had two turnovers this year. Oh, I can only look at his average. So, okay. 2 turnovers this year, 23 assists. So, yeah.
He had a turnover in game 1 and a turnover against Chicago State, and that's it.
Yeah, so.
Not bad. Hey.
And you guys would be happy. Who's number 2?
That's got to be.
Ethan Morton?
Yep, there you go.
Yeah, I'll say it's got to be.
Comes off the bench for Purdue.
He doesn't, I love Ethan Morton. I'm an Ethan Morton truther.
Yeah.
But, one thing he doesn't do a lot is bad turnovers, so.
Yeah.
So and I'll say that with like you were talking about offensive production and not having to be offensive liability, and defense is great, and I get that, but I feel like a lot of teams are moving towards that strategy of having a defensive shutdown guy, because you don't want your offensive threats getting fouled out. You don't want to have that happen, and you don't want them extending a lot of energy on defense, right? Like you want them using the energy on offense. So having those defensive specialists is, I think, huge now in today's college game. So I wouldn't get too much on coaches for putting that guy in there that only averages like 1 or 2 points a game in the starting lineup. Like there's a purpose for that.
But I love to get on coaches, Russ.
Getting on coaches is
we all do. That's what we do.
Is all about. Yeah, that's what we do. We yell at the coaches who.
I love to get on my random podcast and just yell about coaches. I don't know.
One of the funniest coaches shows last year with Painter, I don't know if you listened to this one, Dakota, was when some guy called in when we were ranked number 1.
Yeah, I remember that.
He's like, I'm so-and-so from this group tailgate, and I just want to say, it's a great job, you're number 1, but then lists off this laundry list of like, this is what I think we need to work on, though. And Painter was pretty gracious about it, but
he took it like a champ.
This dude's like making $5 million a year. He's number 1 in the country, and he's going to take notes from you and go, let me change this and change that. Yeah.
Wasn't one of the things in that call about playing zone? I remember there was a big contingent last year who were like, Purdue needs to play a zone. Like, no, you don't want that, I promise.
You don't have to.
You don't.
One dude we did forget to mention for Northwestern, though, is Nick Martelli. 16 points in this game, 5 rebounds. Just great game for him. 6 of 10. Only 1 for 4 from behind the 3-point arc. But it was a great game from him. He really contributed a lot and helped them out. They really didn't get much from their bench other than him. I think they got 2 points from Preston, and that was it. Other than Martelli, that was really all they got from their bench. So look out for Northwestern. Who knows what they'll do week to week. 1 week they can beat the number 1 team in the nation. The next week they can lose to Chicago State. I'm afraid when we play them, and I'm also like kind of joyful when we play them. I don't know how it's going to work out. One of the two will happen. So we'll have to get the Wild Chat on here at some point to explain that to us. But all right, let's move on to our last one. my favorite game
Oh,
of the weekend. I
yes.
loved watching this game. Nebraska takes it to Jerome Tang in the Wildcats at Kansas State, 62-46. You heard us mention it earlier. Rink Mast and Juwan Gary just absolutely went off on the boards combined for 30 rebounds. The dudes were absolutely insane, crazy. I have a question I want to ask later, but I'm going to give you guys the floor to talk about the game first. Dakota, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Very impressed with Nebraska in this one. It was kind of touch and go there for a little bit. I mean, they're down 3 going into the half, but then they absolutely sat on Kansas State. And I think a little bit had to do with Kansas State not being able to knock down some pretty good looks. And Nebraska was definitely doing a good job of knocking down those tougher shots. But I think that's just kind of part of it. They really locked in defensively. And then when you have 2 guys gobbling up 30 of your team's 52 rebounds, you're not going to do much. And they also, Gary, 11 offensive rebounds. He had a double-double with offensive rebounds alone. I mean, when you get 11 extra possessions for your team in a game like this, a true road game at Kansas State, that's going to be massive. They came out and they did exactly what you need to do. Now, I don't know if Kansas State's going to score only 46 at home again this season, but I was very impressed with Nebraska in this one. They also got a bit of a balanced scoring effort, so it really wasn't like, I mean, Mass went off for 19, but I mean, Gary had 13. Tominaga only had 9, but it was on 3 threes. Williams with 10. It was a very balanced effort, and I'm very impressed with Nebraska because I think the thing with Nebraska, especially these last couple of years, is that they'll have these softer non-conference schedules where they'll lose their big games, and then you kind of shrug and go, okay, well, they lost against Creighton at Creighton, or even though they won there. But this was a big one that I had circled this weekend of, is this Nebraska team a little bit for real? I mean, they played very well so far at the beginning of the season, and I was very impressed that they come out with a 62-46 win, true road game. I think we may need to start talking about potential bubble team Nebraska. Not confident to say that as of right now, but I mean, beating Michigan State at home, getting that win before apparently Michigan State decided they wanted to try again, that win could potentially go a long way. That might go right at the top. And if they can kind of play this kind of scrappy, you never know who's going to give it to you, 30 boards from your front court, I think that's something we got to keep an eye on.
Yeah, for sure. I want to know the last time a guy who's 6'6" got 11 rebounds in a game. I mean, Rank Mass, he got 12 rebounds. The dude's 6'10". You're going to expect that. But Juwan Gary, 6'6", 11 offensive rebounds. Like, that's just insane to me. He had a high motor in this game, was just going after every single ball, and you love to see it. I mean, that's what you need to see from some of these teams like Nebraska, is just a guy who has an insane motor, who's going to go after the ball, and the energy and the drive to want to compete and win every single game. That's what you got in Nebraska, and it's really, really cool to see. Kansas State only had 12 points in the second half, so I mean, like you said, Dakota, they just sat on them and just said in the second half, this is our game. We're making it happen. Russ, what were some of your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, since you like stats and trivia questions, and you just mentioned a short guy getting rebounds, I gave you a hint there, but you know who's second on Purdue in rebounds?
Oh boy,
your favorite guy,
Braden Smith.
Yeah, Braden Smith.
Yeah.
So it's
very underrated.
I wouldn't say it's too. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too rare because like a lot of times those smart outside players, they know where to be, where the ball is going to come off, and they're right there to make the play. But Nebraska, I might go one step further, Dakota, and say that they might be a top 4 team in the Big Ten and get a double bye. I mean, they are
40, with a good time.
They are 42nd in KenPom. They're the 6th highest team in the Big Ten in KenPom. And like Ohio State, I mean, I think they're a tier below Ohio State, so I'm not going to compare them, one for one. But they're 9-2. They've got some Power 5 wins. They're a balanced team. Is it just that between them and Ohio State, the guy you thought was going to lead them didn't lead them? Now it's the Rink Mast and Juwan Gary show instead of Tominaga leading the way. It's not Thornton leading the way. It's Roddy Gay. Like, is that what it kind of comes down to? Because they're a very solid ball club, and I'd go like I said further to say that they're in the tournament and might be a top 4 Big Ten team. Not even on the bubble. They might get like a 7-8 seed and have a chance to make the Sweet 16 because they're just playing, like you said, very balanced, very consistent basketball. And those are the kind of teams that can be harder to get out in March because who do you shut down? You shut down one guy, they've got 3 other guys that could go off for 15 points. So I'd be very optimistic if I was a Nebraska fan as well.
100%.
I agree. So here's my question, and we'll go to you first on this, Dakota. Kasai Tamanaga is obviously, the face of this Nebraska team, who's everybody wants to talk about, and I'm not trying to disparage him at all because he had a good game, and he's obviously a very energetic part of this team. But 9 points. That was the fourth most points on the starting lineup. 3 of 11 shooting. We already covered that with Loyer, and we thought that wasn't the best. 3 of 9 from behind the arc. Rank Mast had 19. Juwan Gary had 13. Bryce Williams almost had a double-double himself. We didn't even mention that. 10 and 9. At a certain point, is it time for Rank Mast to take over as the face of this team over Kasai Tamanaga?
Potentially. I mean, I think the biggest thing that Tamanaga has going for him, which is exactly the reason that I fell in love with him, is that I'm always going to love a kid who is just so obvious. He loves playing ball.
Yes.
You see every time he hits a big three that it's just the greatest thing to him. He looks like he's having so much fun every time he's out there. And I'm wondering if he's that guy who silently, maybe potentially is like, yeah, all eyes on me. I'll take 9 threes. I'll hit 3 of them. That's fine enough. Well, my dude over here is going for 19 and 12. Yeah. My other dude over here is going for 10 and 9. We got 13 and 18 over here too. But all eyes on him. I mean, he goes 3 for 11. But I think that just means that eyes are on him. I mean, their defenses are focusing on him. And then you got Rank Mast over here. You got Gary over here. You got Williams over here. I think for him, if you're Nebraska, I hope you keep hoping that he's the face. And every once in a while, he's going to have that game where instead of 3 for 9, he's 6 for 9. And it's going to look like the best thing ever. And so you almost wonder, it's just like, yeah, keep eyes right here. Is your guys over here putting in work. So
keep looking at me while Rank Mast just destroys you on the boards. And
exactly.
Gary is Energizer Bunny. He gets everything. So, Russ, you have any thoughts on that with Kasai Tamanaga, face of the team?
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's the face of the team anymore. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say Rank Mast is the face of the team. I just think they're a balanced team. So, maybe it's just the team photo is the face of the team. The difference between Tamanaga and somebody like Boo Booey is he's got a crew that can pick him up when he's not hitting, and he's not going to shoot 23 pointers if he's 3 for 9 is still 33%. It's not terrible. You're not going 1 for 15. Ohio State, but no, I mean,
thanks.
But no, I think it's a balanced attack. It's a balanced team. I don't think there's one guy that's the face of the program anymore. But like Dakota said, he is very, very fun to watch play basketball. Though, like you can't be upset watching him play.
And at a certain point, we have to give Fred Hoiberg his flowers. I mean, this was a guy that I thought had a very likely chance of being fired last year. I felt like he kind of saved his job. I don't know what his buyout was. I didn't check that. That's stuff other people check. But I did feel like at the end of the season, I was like, man, if this guy doesn't turn around, it very possibly could be fired. And he did turn around. They won like 6 of their last 7 at the end of the year last year, so that helped him. But Fred Hoiberg, he could be putting on his Chris Collins effort this season and having Nebraska be a top 4, maybe 3-2 team in the Big Ten. That's obviously reaching huge heights, but I mean, we saw Northwestern do it last year, so it's possible.
That's the thing with the Big Ten is, the difference between second place and 10th place could be 2 games at the end of the year. So, like you said, you could be there. So,
yeah. And they started off their, I think it was their first, correct me if I'm wrong, but they started off their first conference game with a win on the road at East Lansing in the Breslin Center. So, I mean,
I think that was in Lincoln.
Oh, it was in Lincoln. Okay, but still,
yeah,
I mean,
they lost to Minnesota in their opener, but yeah.
Okay. That one's gonna hold you back a little bit. Yeah. I think.
All right. Well, thanks for proving me wrong, guys. This is the knowledge of a Purdue fan versus an Ohio State fan.
Hey, well, you got us on some stats. We had to get you back a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just really proud of the Matthew Nicholson 11.5 assists to turnover. So
that's a good stat.
Yeah,
that's good pull.
All right. You guys got any more thoughts about the Big Ten or anything before we head on out of here?
Good weekend for the Big Ten. I think this is the kind of weekend the Big Ten needed. They kind of missed on a lot of those marquee games. And I know that we still don't have that many of them, but I mean, good weekend for the conference as they start getting ready for Big Ten play again.
I agree. Russ, any final thoughts?
Yeah, we're getting ready for some of those sleeper bye games. So, enjoy some college bowl games. And then when January hits, you're going to see some Big Ten basketball. It's going to be competitive. Yeah.
This year might just be one of the most fun years to watch in Big Ten ball, just because it seems like it feels like for the first time in a very long time, the Big Ten isn't having this perception of being very strong, kind of top to bottom. And so, which isn't necessarily incorrect, I would say, in my opinion. But I think these kinds of years, maybe outside the top knock on wood, could see a lot of good basketball games night in, night out.
Well, and we'll talk about this in a couple episodes because I'll have Nick and who else do I have? I have another guy coming on, or we're going to talk about our like mid-season rankings and stuff like that. But it had me thinking, I mean, can anybody confidently say who the worst team in the Big Ten is this year? I mean, my first thought is Penn State, but Iowa's also not looking so hot. Michigan, I know Juwan Howard came back, and that's good for them. So, there possibly could be something there. Maryland's, coming back a little bit, but they still don't look great. I mean, can either of you say confidently, like, yeah, this is the worst team in the Big Ten and they're going to finish last?
Confidently, no. This year, more than any, I think feels like there's those pods where it's like you have this group of 4 teams at the bottom. You have like, I'll wax poet again, Purdue at the top, and then like the next group of like 2 or 3, and then the next group of 3 or 4, and then next group of 3 or 4, and it's just I don't think you can. Yeah. Each team's shown some fight.
Yeah, I think we're in for another one of those seasons where every win is going to matter.
Absolutely.
And it's going to come down to, you come to the last week of the season, and if you win your last game, you're the 3 seed, and if you lose it, you're the 11 seed. Like
I can't wait for those graphs, the big graphs with all the percentages. That's going to be the wildest graph this year.
For sure. I would say it's probably Minnesota, but Minnesota beat Nebraska, so I don't even know if I can say that. I mean, and they're 8-3. I know they haven't played anybody, but still.
They're fighty. That's the thing. It's like they're fighty.
Yeah. I mean, Iowa, they lost 3 in a row.
Iowa,
but that was Purdue, Iowa State, and Michigan. But still, I mean, they lost a good team. So I don't know. I can't confidently say who the worst team in the Big Ten is. I can confidently say who the best team in the Big Ten is. I'll let you guys figure that out for yourselves. And then kind of there in the middle, it's just like, who is it? So interesting episode coming up. I think it's Wednesday. I'm going to do that with Nick. And then we're also going to do a player draft. So come back for that one. Let us know in the comments who you'll be drafting as well. We're going to appreciate that and have fun with that. And we'll move on from there. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. And thank you for watching the Big Ten Huddle. Have a great night.